Hi, welcome to the Scappman demo. I'm Wout, one of the co-founders here at Scappman, and today I would love to take you through a demo of our platform. For those who don't know, Scappman is a 100% cloud platform that integrates with Microsoft Endpoint Manager to simplify and automate application installations and updates on your Windows devices. But we don't stop there. We also help you overcome some of MEM's limitations, not just for the third-party apps we provide, but we also give you access to those features so that you can leverage them yourself. Let's dive into it. So we already start our simplification during the registration process. You can just use your Microsoft account to register on our platform. We will just reuse that existing identity that you use day in, day out, and we'll just sign you in with that account. First, we'll ask for some permissions to check if we already know you or not. And in this case, hopefully we won't. And then you will get the terms and conditions, which you should read very carefully. Once you've accepted those terms and conditions, then you will actually grant us consent to create those applications in your tenant. So when you do give us consent to do so, then we'll sign you in again, and you can see that there are a few read permissions that we have, but also a few write permissions. Read and write groups, I'll explain that in a second why we need that. Read and write for Intune apps, that's kind of makes sense, right? But also read and write for Intune devices, I'll also explain during the demo why we need those permissions. And once you accept those permissions, you can fill out some basic company information. We'll use a demo account for this demo. And once that information is filled out, you can continue the registration process and you'll actually arrive at our dashboard. As you can see, there's not a lot of information on this dashboard yet. We've only just registered, so there's really not a lot to show yet. But over time, the dashboard will populate itself with data that is relevant to you. Of course, what it's all about is the App Store. As you can see in the App Store, we currently have 308 apps, but we are adding applications every single day. And let's just go to an application. Like I said, we try to make it very simple to install those apps. So for example, 7-Zip, if you just click install on an application, you can just walk through the UI, select the language you want to install that application in, select who you want to install it for. This, by the way, is the reason why we need the right groups permissions, because we are actually going to create a group in your tenant and will populate that group with those users. By default, Microsoft Endpoint Manager doesn't support assigning users directly to an application, only groups. That's why we solve it this way. And then you can also, of course, assign your existing groups. We've made this very simple with the idea that even if you don't know a lot about IT, so if you are, for example, a non-IT user, that you could actually leverage this as well to manage applications for your coworkers. This is the basic UI, but of course there's also an advanced UI, which I will explain on a different tenant that already has a bit of history that will make it more interesting. So we'll go again to 7-Zip, we'll install it, and we'll immediately go to the advanced part where you can first of all select the bitness that you want for the application. The logic there is if we download it from the vendor website, if the default would be 64-bit, then we will also default to 64-bit. But if there is a 32-bit version available, we will also make that available for you should you want to install a 32-bit version. Secondly, you can configure dependencies. Dependencies is important in case you have to install applications in a specific order. So what we will actually do is we will link those applications up in Intune as well, and we'll make sure in this example that we'll first install Git before we're actually going to start installing 7-Zip. Then you can go to the commands part. So you can see actually exactly here what we're doing. We are using PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit to deploy our applications, which means that we are using some of their commandlets. And here you can see what we're actually doing when we're pushing, for example, 7-Zip. There is a lot of logic that goes into it. For example, we have to remove the executable installers for 7-zip, because 7-zip does not dynamically upgrade between MSIs and executables. So that's why there is some additional logic here. And we're also removing the 32-bit version of 7-zip if it's installed, just to make sure that we can actually move to the 64-bit version. And you can also see what we do for install stuff. And for example, you can add a parameter here should you want to, and then we'll automatically inject that parameter when you're installing that application, and we'll continue to use that parameter, so you can basically customize the install command for your application. And in the post-install, you'll see that we're actually forcing English in this example. So that means that every time you select a language, we'll also make sure afterwards that the application is installed in that specific language. We currently support Dutch, English, French, German, and Spanish for most of the applications. But we also have multi-language options for a lot of apps, which basically means that we will not force a specific language, and we'll keep the default language of the application or the default behavior of that application. Another important feature that we have is update rings. So we base that on the Windows update rings that you have available in Intune, where when you enable those update rings, we will actually create 3 applications in your Intune tenant, where the fast application, so the fast ring, will get, in this example, the update after 0 days. The slow ring will get it 2 days later or 10 days later. You can configure that up to 30 days. And then we will push the update for the application with the number of days that you have configured here as a delay, which is important so that your users can test and validate an update, and you're not just breaking your entire environment with a single update should that update break something. And then when you continue to assignment types, that's where you can select if you want an application to be required. That's the default. Required means that the application will get installed for those users or those devices. They have no choice. But available is, of course, a really nice option that you have in Intune. Then your user can decide whether they want to install an application or not. You're giving them freedom, which is something that they really like. But the big issue right now there is that once that user has installed that available application, you as an IT admin actually lose control over that application, because the update for the application will also just be available. So you have no way of forcing that application to update if that user has decided to install the application, which makes it a bit of a security issue. So what we've done is we're actually going to make 2 applications in this case. When you make it available, we're going to have one that is indeed available for those users that you assign it to, and we'll make a second one that is actually going to be required. And what we're going to do there to make sure that we don't just install it everywhere is it uses a requirement script, which is going to check if the application is installed by checking the programs and features applet. And when we do see that it is installed, then we'll update it. If we don't see that it's installed, we will just skip the update altogether, and the application won't get installed on that device. And that update, you can actually choose if you want to enable it for all users or all devices as well. So that means that even if your user is out of scope for the available application, you can still make sure that the application gets updated on his device to make sure that he's safe, up to date, and secure. And then you can also just push the applications without any assignments and manage the assignments in Intune itself. Because we are updating those applications every time, we will not touch those assignments, so you don't necessarily have to configure those assignments in Scappman. And then the next part is where you can, for each ring, configure who is going to get the application. So for this example, I'll just pick some random users, and we'll actually create those groups, put those users in those groups, and start the deployment of those applications. Obviously, it's not the first time I'm installing this app, so I have to give it a random name. And there we go. Once I hit install, it will start pushing to our API. So now it is posted to our API. Our API will now start real-time packaging the application and then uploading it to your tenant. For 7-zip, it's going to take a few minutes. So we'll see here that while it's grayed out, it's not ready yet. So there is not a lot you can modify on this application yet. You can see the dependency here, so you can already see some information about it. But then when we go, for example, to an existing application that we've had for some time, then here you can see a few tasks that you can do to manage that application. So first of all, say we've pushed an update for 7-zip. That update has for some reason broken some functionality, and you don't want that update to be pushed to your other update rings. You can just disable those updates by toggling the switch here, and will actually no longer update those apps. And you can fix the issue, and then once the issue is fixed, you can go back, re-enable those updates, or you can actually just leave it off and just use the Update Now button here, which is right now not available because there is no update for 7-zip available. But basically, we're giving you control over whether you want auto updates or not, and to force those updates manually should you want to. That's also, for example, interesting when there's yet another bug, another 0-day in Chrome, and you don't want to wait your 4 days until you update Chrome. Then you can just go to the portal, force the update, and will straight away force the updates to your tenants to make sure that you're again safe and secure and up to date. Then there's also the redeploy option. Basically what that means is that we're going to delete the existing application that you have in Intune, and we're going to redeploy it with the settings that you have configured in Scappman. And then there is some modification options, so you can edit the application, edit some settings that you have configured before for that application. So we've already got quite an extensive catalog of public applications, but should you still feel there are some applications missing or should require new other public applications, we can actually package those for free. Right now, any public application will be packaged and tested for free. Public application means any application that we can just freely download from the vendor's website without having to create an account, without having to provide an email address, stuff like that. And once we package them, we'll also make sure that they get monitored for updates and always keep them up to date. Now, if you have your own private application, which can't be freely downloaded from the internet, we can actually package that as well. That's a paying option where we do the packaging for you. We push it through our testing cycle, which also tests Autopilot, by the way. And then we will make it available for you in your tenants, where you also become the owner of the application. Obviously, we won't monitor updates for that application because we don't want to have access to your account. But should there be an update available, you can either update it yourself because you're the owner of the application, or you can ask us to update the application for you again, and then we'll repackage it, retest it, and then make it available for you again. And at the same time, you can use those features that we have, like those updating those available applications and those update rings. Now, should you know how to package yourself, should you want to just do it yourself, you actually can. You can just create a new application yourself. You have all of the power of PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit at your disposal, so any commandlet that PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit uses is available in here, and you can just create that application yourself. We are right now in the process of redesigning this UI to make it more user-friendly, to make it simpler to create those applications that, for example, based on the file type that you upload, we will make suggestions on the install commands to use and stuff like that. Moving on to the auditing, so every action that you take gets audited. I don't think that's very interesting until it's interesting, so let's move on to the reporting. But before we do, let's first check out the dashboard. So the dashboard gives you an overview of your environment, the basic health statistics of your environment. You can also very nicely see when Azure decided to break down, and you have a bit of an overview about your environment. And if you want to drill down to that, you can go to reports, and there you can see for every application the statistics, every application that we manage, the statistics. And here you, for example, in 7-zip, you can see that it failed. You can see why it failed with which exit code. But obviously the exit code doesn't tell us everything. It would still be nice if we could dive deeper into that. So what we are doing is we are using the Intune log collection feature to collect log files about the installation. Usually that's quite complicated to do because you have to provide the file name, the location of the file, and then wait several hours before the file is actually uploaded. What we're doing every night, because we know exactly where those log files are, we know that the installation failed, we are just automatically triggering the log collection feature of Intune, and we are collecting those logs for you so that they are available. We are, by the way, not storing those log files ourselves. They are still coming from Intune, and we're just making them available for you here live. So you can just download them, access those log files, and try and figure out why this installation actually failed. So here's, for example, a log file that you can investigate to see what went wrong. You can also get an overview about all of the applications. So if you select all the applications here, we'll give you all the details about all of those applications and their statistics, and you can export that to a CSV as well, so that should you want to, you can actually create your own Power BI dashboard, for example, based on that data. Moving on to the settings page. So here we have naming. Obviously, we have a naming for the installations ourselves in our portal, but there is also a naming in Intune. So in Intune, we'll actually push the application with a certain naming convention. You can configure that naming convention here to keep it to whatever you want. There's also a branding part that brings us to an important thing that we do with Scappman. By default in Intune, when you update an application and it's running, it will actually just close the running application without informing the user. So it basically kills the process. What we're doing is when we see that the process is running, we'll give a pop-up for the user where he can choose to either close the program or postpone the update up to 3 times, by the way. The 4th time, the user will be forced to update. And then we'll make sure that there is some interaction, that we don't just cause the user to lose data. Now, this logo that you can see here, that can be customized with your own logo, so that the user knows and trusts this pop-up. And you can brand it a bit. If you're a managed service provider, you can actually brand this for all of your customers at the same time. So if you configure your own logo, it will actually automatically take that logo for all of your customers, unless your customers override it themselves. You can also configure the publisher name in Intune, by the way, which will be also pushed to your tenant. Then we have the notifications part, where we will just send notifications about the updates. Obviously, we won't spam you. This is just about if there are updates available. If we've pushed updates, we'll notify you about that. And you can also invite additional admins to manage Scappman. So by default, not anyone will be able to sign into Scappman from your tenant. It's only the people that you invite here that will be able to sign in. If someone else tries to sign in, they will get a request access button, which you can, in that request, you can approve or deny. That's kind of it for the basic stuff about Scappman. So these are all the features that we have that are available for everyone. Now, if you're a managed service provider, we actually have some additional features available for you. So this is actually a managed service provider. So you'll see that this is, when I sign in at least, that this is a different tenant. So it has slightly different information. It's got a trial that is going to expire in a few months. And as you can see, he didn't really install any applications yet. But this MSP does have access to the customer that we were seeing just a few minutes ago. And here you can see the exact same data that customer is seeing. You can manage his installations, manage his applications, and really have a view on that customer himself. So we try to make it easy for MSPs to just switch between the customers so that they can see what's going on for those customers. If you're a managed service provider, you probably have like 90% of your customers that are using the same base set of 20 applications. And even though it's already quite easy and quite fast in Scappman to assign those new installations, it still takes a bit of time. So what we came up with is application sets, and as the name suggests, is actually a set of applications that you can assign to a set of your customers. So say you're onboarding a new customer and you want to add him to your base set of applications, you can just go to the application set, go to the assignments tab, add the customer, and that's it, you're done. He will now get all of the applications that you've added in the application set, or say you want to add a new application to your base application set, because all of your customers now need a new application. You can just go there, select that application, and just add it, and we'll push that application to those customers that you've selected in that application set. Just to walk you through the entire process, you can just enter a name for the application set, add some applications. You'll see that this UI is actually quite familiar to what you've seen before. The main difference being that you can't select who you are going to assign the application to. That's because if you make it required, we're going to assign it to all devices. If you make it available, we're going to assign it to all users in those tenants. So when you hit save, you can just select the next application. And then when we click through it, we'll end up with some applications that are available, some that are required. And we've also got update rings here. Now, the main difference with these update rings and the update rings that you had with the regular applications is that instead of selecting a subset of users in these rings, you're actually going to select a subset of your customers that you're going to assign to a specific ring. Again, the same parameters. You can delay up to 30 days for each ring you can assign who's going to be in it, and we'll deploy those updates with the delay that you've configured. And then when you go into the assignments tab here, you can for each ring select which customer you want to add to it. And once you hit save, we'll push those applications to those tenants and you'll be able to manage them. Now, it isn't in here. You can actually also click on those application sets. And should you want to, you can actually disable those automatic updates for those specific rings for a specific application. So we try to give you some granular control. And also when there is, for example, another 0-day in Chrome that's been released, that's been patched, then instead of waiting the number of days delay that you've configured, you can actually just go to the portal and in 2 simple clicks, update the application for all of those users. We support up to 200 applications and 200 customers in a single application set, so up to 40,000 installations in total. So basically it gives you the power to just update a single application for 200 users with just 2 simple clicks. You can obviously also invite your customers with basically the same principle as the Microsoft CSP, where you just have a link that you can copy. You can use that link to connect to your customers. When they browse to it, they will be requested if they want to connect with you, and you will gain access to their tenant, and you can manage their applications for them. And if you've configured your branding, they will actually get your logo in the pop-up as well. You'll get their dashboard. You'll see their information. That's it for my demo. Thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Here are our contact details, and if you want to register, try it out yourself, just browse to portal.scappman.com, and there you can very easily start your trial and get acquainted with our product. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.